Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for the latest Telemedia Magazine vodcast with me, Jarvis Todd, publisher of Telemedia Magazine, my old friend Paul Skeldon, editor-in-chief of the magazine itself, and the wordsmith and real expert when it comes to all things telemedia. For anyone that doesn't know, we're going to spend a quick sort of 5 minutes musing over one of the most interesting stories that's come across the news desks of Telemedia HQ, and seeing if we can give you a little bit more of an insight as somebody who's interested in the telemedia industry, and that's usually something to do with advertising, marketing, and selling premium digital services across the digital landscape. And we talk about how you get those customers on board, how you get them to pay, and how you keep them happy and you stay out of the way of all the nasty regulations and fraud problems that may come your way at the same time. Now, anyone that's watched the podcast recently will have known that we picked up on a story a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about payments, and we looked at the onset of something which is being developed in the EU called the digital euro. And Paul picked it out as sort of a folly at the end of one of our sort of payment specials. And said it's just one to look out for. And then, hey presto, not more than sort of 3 or 4 weeks later, the sort of news story is that this digital euro thing is creeping ever closer. And the reason for that is that the ECB has approved 36 PSPs and selected merchants to join a pilot scheme, and that's going to be starting quite quickly in 2027. It will test NFC, e-commerce, and n-commerce journeys. And it's effectively going to build a new kind of regulated payment rail for Europe. So if we're going to be talking about payments and payment rails, which is the new buzzword, I think. I don't know where rails goes. It just came out of nowhere. Anyway, obviously the telemedia industry really needs to understand how this might reshape their payment landscape, particularly with regards to DCB, which we obviously know underpins the telemedia industry, wallets, which is now becoming a big thing, and of course subscription billing, and all the other things that will go into your payment suite. So, Paul, I know this is kind of a bit of a pet
Hmm.
subject of yours now, isn't it? And that says a lot about you. So I think when we first spoke about the digital EU, you kind of thought, well, I'm just mentioning that'll be it for a
Hmm.
while. And it's developments seem to have happened quite quickly.
Well, it's gathering pace. Yes. I mean, for a bit of background, it's quite a fascinating idea that the sort of European Central Bank, the ECB, has set up this sort of a centralized digital currency. So in some ways, it's a bit like a cryptocurrency, except it's backed by central banks, so it doesn't have the sort of volatility and sort of the whiff of naughtiness around it. So it's a fine idea, but actually it's designed to do all sorts of things. And one of the things that's particularly interesting about it is that it's a sort of marked move, I think, by Europe to try and get away from the sort of card payment infrastructures run by people like MasterCard and Visa. It's a way of trying to create a different way of doing digital transactions. And so,
It's a
it's been.
sovereign payment rail for
Yeah,
Europe.
absolutely, and it's an interesting because it's a bit like a cryptocurrency, so it's a kind of modern way of doing money, so that's great, and it fits in beautifully with like all digital commerce, which is where it'll be interesting for telemedia. But it's been talked about for ages. It's been rumbling around, and there's all sorts of arguments about the fee structure and how it'll work. But despite all that, this trial has been announced where they're going to use these 36 PSPs and selected merchants to actually try it out.
Do we know who they
Um,
are?
there is a list of I haven't found all 36. I did find a list that had about 20 of them in it. And they're kind of big, they're people like Adyen and sort of they're big payment companies, and some big merchants. That it's mainly focused in Europe. There's nothing really that sort of touches the UK currently. Uh, so there is a list. If you Google it, it does come up with various different permutations of who is on this list. When I was looking at this end of last week, I think it was, I couldn't find a definitive list of all 36. But anyway, that might now be there. So we'll have a look. So it's interesting because it's sort of, I think, could potentially be in Europe a very different payment mechanism for telemedia services. I mean, I don't think it's going to destroy carrier billing, but it's yet another sort of tool for payments. And if it does take off in the way that the European Central Bank hopes it will in, the next sort of 5, 10 years, it could well be the de facto way that people pay for everything, which will include the
Yeah.
stuff that our people do.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, the benefits would be things like instant settlements,
Yeah,
um, regulated access, low fees, which would make it ideal for subscriptions, that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Microtransactions, streaming passes, all of the things that are sort of, dear to the traditional, well, not the traditional, the telemedia industry. And as I say, I think the particularly eye-catching one is the instant payments and the low fees. I mean, that seems to
yeah,
be a game changer. And again, I mean, when we talk about new payment solutions coming on online, we always compare them to the frictionless, the instantaneous natures of DCB and all the benefits that DCB has, and how that's been a sort of blueprint towards converting customers into paying customers,
mm,
at a single click. And any other payment mechanisms that don't really do it that well, certainly have a place, but that's why DCB has been so good. And it does seem as though some of these new payment systems do fall into the category of providing pretty much all the benefits that you would want, for a sort of seamless onboarding of a happy paying customer, and particularly if you're, thankfully targeting the right services, using clean traffic to the right customers. Then, actually, I see this again as being potentially quite exciting news for the telemedia industry and for, merchants across Europe,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think
digital
to
merchants.
some degree, it's another form of account to account payment. It's very secure because it's European Central Bank backed. So, like, any individual bank failures aren't going to cause, people to lose money. And yes, it's a nice seamless way of paying. And I think it works very well in the European market because a lot of the people that buy digital stuff and subscribe to things are banked. So I think you have to have a bank account. I'm not sure. That's unclear. Um, But I think it doesn't do away with all the other benefits of carrier billing. Carrier billing is a great and will remain a great onboarding tool, I
Mm,
think,
mm, mm,
and an instant access tool, and sort of doing things on the fly. I think it's still we've got many years of that being a sort of key part of this. But I think what we might see is in Europe, things like the digital euro, should it take off, will become much more prevalent, and services will then be built around it.
mm.
And
Well, I
it
agree, and as you say, I mean, the DCB's onboarding capabilities are well documented and well understood in our industry. But of course, going back to the sort of margins on the payments, the
Mm,
the idea then is once you've onboarded that customer, you then sort of try to migrate them to a different payment
yeah,
environment, which traditionally would have been, a credit card of some sort. But again, that does limit the number of people that you can move across. But now we've been talking about all these other, A to Ps and ideas like, open banking, or things that have been, as a result of open banking, and now the digital euro. Sounds as though the future in terms of being able to
mm,
migrate a user across to a much more viable payment mechanism, which is, free, if you like, of the sort of constraints of Visa and MasterCard even. And we've talked about some of the issues with those guys as well. Again, yeah, I think this is nothing but an opportunity to, convert even more customers, and keep those customers happy, and, and,
mm.
and subscribing in whatever payment environment that they choose. So yeah, I think this is another tool for the industry, and I think it's one that, yeah, no doubt you'll be reporting back on after the summer. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see where it sort of goes. I mean, it might all go quiet now they've announced the trial. We'll just wait to see what happens with it. It could be years, but I just think it's quite interesting. And we've talked on other podcasts. I think the previous one of the previous ones we did a few weeks ago was we talked about PIX in Brazil, and we've talked
right,
about
yeah.
UPI in India. These sort of alternative ways of paying that, like, can be wallets, they can be all sorts of things. it is being really shaken up how people pay and how they do micropayments now. They subscribe to digital services. And I think this is another part of that. It's clearly a market that's really developing, and there's all these
Mm.
different ways to pay. And I guess it all just comes back to what we've been saying at previous events, particularly, that really it's about orchestrating how you offer as many of those as possible.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that because if you do want to find out how to orchestrate these payment mechanisms, as Paul mentioned, you really need to start planning to be in Marbella for the next telemedia show on the 4th to the 6th of October. Please go to wtevent.com to register and to buy your delegate pass, which is a little bit cheaper if you do it before the 31st of July. Sadly, we are not able to offer a digital euro payment rail at this
Not
point.
yet.
But I can assure you that the minute it's available, we will be giving you the opportunity to live demo it when you register for this excellent event. But seriously, if you're in the industry and you want to keep pace with what's going on, there's no better way than actually meeting people face to face and sharing anecdotal evidence, meeting new customers and partners. It's the highest concentration of telemedia decision makers in the calendar. So Marbella is where you need to be on the 4th to the 6th of October. And I can assure you that in the excellent conference program that Paul and I are putting together, this payment rail and many others will be discussed in detail with all the opportunities, challenges, and threats that you might need to know about in order to effectively be able to bill real paying customers for fantastic high quality digital services across the planet. So we hope to see you in Marbella after the summer, and this actually will be our last podcast until said summer is over. So if anyone's out there, well, I mean, if you're watching this in 2027, this is a waste of time. But for now, if you're watching it in 2026, have a great summer, and we will be back in September, and we'll see you in Marbella.
We will indeed.
So thanks for watching. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, and have a good summer.
I will.